Hey, the Dolphins got the victory 34-13 over the New York Jets. First ever game on Black Friday, which is pretty cool. The Miami Dolphins will go down in history as the first ever winners on a Black Friday game in the National Football League. 34-13. How'd they do it? Well, Javon Holland certainly helped with his 99-yard interception return on the final play of the first half. That was electric. But what we're going to do right now is an Ask Anything mailbag. We love doing this on Dolphins Today, so let's not waste any more time as the Dolphins get the win over the New York Jets, 34-13. Also got to give a shout out to the defense. They sacked Tim Boyle 7 times. Really impressive there. Dolphins offense still turning the ball over far too often, and that's what we're going to break down everything surrounding the Miami Dolphins with an Ask Anything mailbag. So let's get it going. First question right away from Get Daggett 345. How about that? Love the name. Using the hashtag Dolphins, are Tua's interceptions concerning? He has to be better, in my opinion. Great question. And I think this is a good spot to start because we've seen the dust settle. The Dolphins are 8-3. We're really happy with that. First place in the AFC East. You're in every bit of the conversation to get a number 1 seed, a first-round bye in the AFC. All of that is in front of you. And what is the one thing holding this team back, or what is believed to be holding this team back moving forward? It's the interceptions. Or more broadly, it's the turnovers, right? So Tua had a good game, 21 of 30, 243 yards. You see that stat line, you think that's a good game. But those 2 interceptions right there at the bottom of the screen negates that productivity, in my opinion, especially when you consider one of those interceptions went for a pick 6. And we said all week long, leading up to this game, the Jets offense isn't going to do anything. You can't give the defense opportunities to create momentum for the Jets, and that's exactly what Tua did in the first half by throwing those 2 interceptions, and one of them being a pick 6. Now, fortunately, because the Dolphins defense has been playing at such an elite level, they bailed Tua out. And I use the term bail out because I think that's exactly how the Dolphins got the win against the Raiders. I know that's ancient history at this point, but it's becoming a little bit repetitive the way the Dolphins defense is bailing out the offense, and it worked against the Jets, it worked against the Raiders because, in my opinion, those teams are a little bit lower on the NFL totem pole, not necessarily in the upper echelon of NFL teams. And so when you start to move forward, yes, the next couple of games for the Dolphins are relatively easy. You got the Commanders, you got the Titans, and then you got the Jets again. But after that, the schedule picks up. Down the stretch, you go Cowboys, then you go Ravens, and then you finish it with the divisional matchup against the Bills. Against quality teams, Tua Tagovailoa cannot turn the ball over. I am concerned over what the offense has shown the last couple of weeks with the turnovers and specifically with the interceptions. So I know it's not as simple as, hey, Tua, stop turning the ball over. Look, I know how football works. It doesn't. You can't just tell the quarterback to stop turning the ball over. But it's up to Mike McDaniel, Frank Smith, and the staff to figure out a way to get back to the beginning of the season where Tua was clicking on all cylinders. The offense was playing complementary football. The running game was working. They were scoring points in buckets. All of those components of the offense they've shown they're capable of. We just haven't seen it as of late. So, to answer your question, yes, I am concerned. And how about the question? Let me know in the chat. Confidence level in Tua Tagovailoa moving forward. You got to scale it for me, 1 through 10. Right now with Tua, I got to say it's close to about a 5 for me. I know what he's capable of. He's played at an MVP level in parts of this season. Go back to that Broncos game, and you can say, oh, it was the Broncos, but the Broncos are one of the best teams in football right now. Hottest teams, not one of the best teams in football, but one of the hottest teams in football. They've won a number of games in a row here, and so I don't think that's a fluke, but I think this Dolphins offense, there's a lot out there on film. Teams are figuring out how to defend them, and Tua Tagovailoa is kind of turning into that feast or famine quarterback where sometimes he does. He plays at an MVP level, and then other times, like the last 2 games, you got him turning the ball over left and right, and the only reason the Dolphins have won the last 2 games is because their defense and what they've been able to do under first-year defensive coordinator Vic Fangio. So it's a total role reversal of what we've seen from this Dolphins team in the last couple of weeks, and because of that, my concern level for Tua, and my confidence level for that matter, is only at a 5. All right, moving on, of course, before we go any further, got to remind you to subscribe to the channel because, hey, we reached another milestone. We got to 51K, and that's a testament to each and every one of you out there subscribing to the channel and for making Dolphins Today a priority. We sure appreciate it. Let's get a few more questions coming in on this Ask Anything mailbag. We go to Descotts with the question using that hashtag Dolphins. How big of a loss is Jaelan Phillips? Yeah, this one's going to be tough to talk about. And I know the medical staff is in charge of all of this, but he left the game, non-contact injury, and it just did not look good. Later reports surfaced that it is an Achilles, and so we'll continue to keep you updated on that. But it's such a bummer because Jaelan Phillips was playing at such a high level, and the combination of him and Bradley Chubb entering this game, they had 10 sacks in 5 games. They had a couple of sacks during this game. The Dolphins defense as a whole sacked Boyle 7 times, which is really impressive. And Jaelan Phillips, he had the interception last week. He was just playing at such a high level, and to have a non-contact Achilles injury is such a bummer. So I don't, as more information comes out with the Jaelan Phillips injury, we'll obviously find out more as that information is made available, but it doesn't look good. And, unfortunately, you saw the emotion when he was wheeled off. You saw the distress that he was in, and it just does not look good for Jaelan Phillips. So we appreciate him, and he played so well. Got to give him a shout-out. He was awesome, but unfortunately, moving forward, his season does not look like it's going to continue. And as for how big of a loss, it's a huge loss, and it's going to be up to Andrew Van Ginkel, who's shown he can play really well as a replacement of Jaelan Phillips, and he'll be called on to do a lot more as an edge rusher for Jaelan Phillips. And Jaelan Phillips missed some time earlier this season. He missed that Week 2 Sunday night football game against the Patriots and missed a couple other games. So Andrew Van Ginkel will be the guy the Dolphins lean on in his absence. A couple more questions to get to on this Ask Anything mailbag. But before we go any further, I want to give a shout out to today's sponsor, Prize Picks. PrizePicks.com/CLNS is where you need to go because we've got a $100 deposit match for you when you start playing daily fantasy sports. What's daily fantasy sports, Jake? Well, I'm so glad you asked. It's the far and away the most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports because you simply pick more or less on a player's projected stat line, and that's when the fun begins. I have a ton of fun doing it every single Dolphins game. I rolled with these picks on the Black Friday game, and I was so close, but Tim Boyle did end up going over more. So the way Prize Picks works, a player has a projected stat line, you simply pick more or less. So I picked more with Tua Tagovailoa's projected passing yardage, more with Raheem Mostert's projected rushing and receiving yards, and less with Tim Boyle's projected passing yards. I went check, check, minus. Now, had I picked a flex play instead of the power play, this Prize Pick would have hit. So a power play means you got to get every single one right. A flex play means you only got to get 2 out of the 3 or 3 out of the 4 right. And the payouts vary based on which level you choose. But obviously, you pick the power play, you're going to get paid out better than if you pick the flex play. So that's how it works. It's a ton of fun. Go to prizepicks.com/CLNS. That's where you get the $100 deposit match, courtesy of your friends here at Dolphins Today. You're welcome, and we'll put that link in the description of today's video as well. prizepicks.com/CLNS. Now, a few more questions to get to. This from Dolphins Nation 777. What's holding back the Dolphins from being a Super Bowl contender? In a word, turnovers. That is the biggest Achilles heel of this Dolphins team right now. It's the turnovers. That's now 7 of 8 games in which they haven't won the turnover battle. Now, they're proving me wrong as a football guy. I always say you can't lose the turnover battles and expect to win games. the Dolphins have won games, even though they've lost the turnover battle, which you're not going to see very often. They're 8-3 this season, and they've only won the turnover battle a handful of times. And yeah, against the Jets, they lost the turnover battle, but you see how, or I'm sorry, it was an even turnover, but you see how that impacts negatively the offense when Tua's thrown a pick six. There's a lot to gripe about when it comes to the Dolphins' turnovers, and if there's something holding this team back, that's exactly what it was. Now, the defense is playing much better, and at times, it's just so tough because at times you see that offense, you see them get in a rhythm, and you think they should do this every time, but unfortunately, it just was not a consistent level of play against the Jets. This one from Don and Irene. With injury to Jaelan Phillips, should the Fins pursue linebacker/defensive end Barnett, who was released by the Philadelphia Eagles? Absolutely. I know it's a two-part question, but yes, that is a good question. Derek Barnett released by the Eagles, and he could be a huge addition to the Miami Dolphins. The Eagles have a ton of depth at that position. They needed to make roster spots available, so they went ahead and released Barnett, and that would be a nice pickup for the Dolphins. He's a little bit older of a player and an NFL veteran out of Tennessee, has played well in this league. You've seen the production kind of start to go down a little bit, so it's not like it's a plug-and-play situation where you lose Phillips and you replace him with Barnett, and all of a sudden you'll have that same level of production, but it would be a nice addition to a team that loses part of their defense. And I don't hesitate to say the heart and soul of the defense, because Jaelan Phillips and Bradley Chubb, both of them, had that special dynamic duo feel to them as the edge rushers. But I'm confident in Andrew Van Ginkel, and if you want to add a guy like Barnett, that would be huge, who Philly just released. Second part of that question, if you want to swing back to that one. Real quick, though, show some love in the comments to Jaelan Phillips. That's our guy. Type those 1-5s in the comments. We love Jaelan Phillips, and tough to see him go down with that Achilles injury. Type those 1-5s in the comments. And second part of that question, should the Dolphins pursue La'el Collins, who played with Connor Williams? I said this at the trade deadline. I've said this during free agency. I'll say it again. Yes, yes, yes. The injuries continue to take a toll on the Dolphins' offensive line. Teron Armstead, the latest version of that, he left today's game. Lester Cotton might be banged up a little bit as well. You had Keon Smith in there on the offensive line, and it's just been a revolving door. It's like musical chairs, and it's just tough to continue to watch these Dolphins offensive linemen. I know injuries are part of the game, but this has been really tough. But appreciate all the questions and everybody tuning in to our mailbag. Ask anything on this edition of Dolphins Today. Shout out to Smitty on the ones and twos. You can always subscribe at youtube.com/Dolphin News. And shout out to the Dolphins getting their 8th win of the season, 34-13 on over the Jets on Black Friday. First ever NFL game on Black Friday. Cool stuff there. The Dolphins move to 8-3 on the season.